Hello and welcome to Power Pantaloons podcast. My name is Tanya. I'm your holistic cancer wellness specialist. And today we have with us special guest, Dr. Danielle. Welcome to the program. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I understand that you had a cancer diagnosis at one point. Was it just one or did you have multiple?
No, I was 15 years old and I was just having a regular checkup, and then the doctor said, "Oh, this spot doesn't look good." And first they removed it with a hook or whatever, and then it came back. So they went deeper into it and checked it, say, yeah, it's cancer. And I had to come about every 6 months and I removed other spots. And at one point, one of the doctors said, "Well, we're not going to remove all these spots all the time." And say, "I don't want that, but I was told to come back." And then he went to whatever, checking the file and say, "Yep, that's right, you have to come back."
Huh.
And then I was studying psychology with an institute in Paris. I had met a psychoanalyst and he opened doors for me. And that institute in Paris was also teaching about nutrition. So I started to read what they had to say. And I bought my first juicer when I was 18 and did a deep detox and cleanse. And I didn't go back to the surgeon for that.
What kind of cancer was it?
And it's skin cancer. I imagine it's a deep kind because there is some places where they had to go 3 times and go deeper and then deeper
Oh,
again. They never told me what it was really.
and you said 15, so that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. I bought my first juicer at 18 and did not go back for surgery. But cancer is a tricky thing. For me, that's what I needed. I learned later on during my studies as a naturopath that there is a correlation, not a causation, correlation between vaccines and cancer. And I had had a lot of vaccines, which didn't work because I still had the childhood diseases they were supposed to prevent. So I grew up on a lot of antibiotics and a lot of toxins. And I think that's, one thing the body does is try to put these toxins so it's not going to bother you very much. And for me, I already had goals in my life. So I just needed to detox these toxins. But I say cancer can be tricky. It's not just detox and it's gone. I think there's also emotional sides, mental sides.
Yes, I do agree with that. I had uterine cancer, and I believe that the reason I had uterine cancer is because I was assaulted when I was 5, and I ended up with gonorrhea.
Yep.
And I believe that that destroyed my uterus, right? And it just took a long time to incubate because I didn't process the
Yes.
trauma.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah,
of time they see trauma when you go to a doctor who is aware and will ask you what kind of trauma have you had in your life. And it can be a year and a half or 20 years.
yeah, it's kind of amazing. So walk me through the process. So you did juicing. What other alternative things did you, was it just nutrition or did
At
you
the
do
time,
other
that's all
things?
I knew. And I grew up in Switzerland, so we didn't have the fast food, the junk food at the time. When I grew up, for breakfast, my mom would cross the street, go get fresh bread that was still healthy type of bread that the baker had made that day, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we had fresh bread and we ate together as a family with my dad and my two brothers. Then we went to school, dad went to work. And while we were at school and work, mom went to the little grocery store where they had fresh farm products, went to the butcher shop and bought some fresh meat that was grass fed at the time. And then we ate again all together at noon. And dad had an hour and a half. The kids had 2 hours. He took a nap, then went back to work. We went back to school. And in the evening, we ate pretty simple soup and salad or, some cold cuts, but it was still pretty healthy foods.
Yeah, yeah. I So when I went through my cancer journey, I didn't fix my nutrition. That was like the only thing I didn't do. And I've since started doing that. It worked extremely well for you. And I've encountered a bunch of people that having the right nutrition, putting the right things in your body and making sure that the wrong things are not in your body go a very long way in keeping you healthy.
Absolutely. I think there is two sides to the cancer. One is toxins, physical toxins from food or medicine or just the air we breathe, the water we drink. There is an element of toxins. And then, like you said, the trauma. You had sexual abuse, so trauma is one of the things that can cause cancer.
Yeah. There's so many things that can. And as to toxins, a lot of people believe that, you know, genetics are the cause of cancers, but only 5 to 8% of them are actually genetic. The rest of it is toxins. So, yeah.
So I even heard it's between 1 and 3%.
Oh, yeah. So,
You
I
know, so
mean,
you may have, okay, you may have the gene for cancer, it's true, but you're the one that's going to activate that gene. And imagine a gene is like a ball, and you have 10,000 possibility on that ball. Why are you activating the cancer? There is a reason for that.
yeah,
So yeah, maybe you have the genetics, but you are the one activating that genetic. It's called epigenetics. It's beyond genetic.
there's so much to study. Tell me
It's
more about
never
I
ending.
love having conversations like this because I learn new stuff every time I have a conversation, right? And it's beautiful to have conversations like this with other survivors and what worked for them and how they handled having cancer.
Yeah, I think, food nutrition is a big part of it. But maybe we'll talk that on another segment. I had a client who had cancer, and nutritionally, he was doing everything right, but he refused to deal with his emotions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he didn't make it, unfortunately. So you have to be open. And to me, emotion is just energy in motion. You don't want emotions to be stuck, and sometimes that's what happens. But definitely, there's a lot of things about nutrition and about juicing, especially vegetable juicing, green juices, organic green juices. Not so much the fruits, because fruits will, have sugar, and cancer
Sugar.
loves
Love
sugar.
sugar. It sure does. Yeah. So clearly you prefer juicing. Do you also eat raw vegetables and things like that, or do you think that matters? A raw
Yeah, I
versus
think it
cooked diet?
matters too. And we have different seasons in our life. For a while, I was vegetarian, so I went through India. And when I saw what the meat was in India, we had to go, to the market, and they had these goats hanging, and it was not appealing. So I became vegetarian. Later on, I became vegan. Then I was raw vegan. And I was working with a naturopath, and I didn't feel that good. I was going through a divorce at the time, and he told me, "You continue being a raw vegan, you're gonna die." And I said, "But raw food has all the enzymes, all the vitamins." And I did some research because I trusted him, and he was right. People have died on a raw food diet. It's not for everybody. So, I started to cook food and put a lot of spices. He told me my kidney meridian was so low that was cool in Chinese medicine, that if I continue with the cold food, that was going to be too much. So start cooking food and start adding spice, and that helped me a lot. But I was still vegetarian. And then during my studies as a naturopath, I went to a workshop, and the guy said, "Well, with your blood type, your metabolic type, you need to eat meat." And I said, "I haven't eaten meat in so long. I tried, I didn't like it." And then one day I went to a restaurant with a friend, and he had a rare steak. And I asked him, "Can I have a bite of that?" And I got a bite of a steak. And it was like, if you remember Popeye, like when he ate his spinach, the energy he got.
Yeah.
And that's the same sensation I had with that bite of meat. So once a week, then I had my fillet, my beef fillet, and I recovered. I was just weak and, low energy. I was not cancer at the time, but I believe that depending what season of your life it is, what age you are, what you are fighting for a problem, then you need to eat differently. I think there is something where everybody, like we have two eyes, a nose, and one mouth. There is a general rule. It's much better to eat organic. There is some food that are toxic, so you don't eat those. If you eat meat, choose the right kind of meat with animals have been well treated. So that's all important. So that's
Yes.
kind of, the Nutrition 101. I wrote that book about Nutrition 101 because I couldn't find one that just go through the basics you want to do. You want to eat right.
Well, the for here in America, they change the food pyramid. They do it all the time. They continually change, and it's it seems to me that like they don't necessarily know what they're talking about, right? Like, and they just keep changing it up. And I think part of the problem is, as you said, at different seasons in our life, and blood types, and we're all different. So there, I don't think there is one fit for everybody. I think that we have to find the right puzzle for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And functional medicine now has you take all kind of tests, which are quite expensive, but you can test yourself and get to learn about yourself. When I was going through that juicing and everything, since food seems to have something to do with how well I felt, I was 18 years old and I started to test food on me. So I would not eat one kind of food for 3 weeks, then I would overdo it to see what part of my body it affected. The only one I really remember were apricots. I love apricots. And I didn't eat any, it was a season, and then I ate a whole bunch of them. And I had to call sick at work. I could not stand. I was bent over. My bladder was in so much pain. Say,
Wow.
oh, okay. And not that long ago, it was last season, say, oh, I'm sure it's not gonna affect me again. Guess what? I overdid it on apricots and I had a UTI.
Yeah. See,
So
but
we
you
are
figured it
all
out,
different.
right?
Yeah, and people say almonds are so healthy. Well, if I eat almond, I have burns down on my upper arm and on the lower arm on the left. And the doctor said, yeah, it's affecting your heart meridian.
Yeah.
And almonds are supposed to be such a good food, but not for me.
Yep. I can't have kiwis.
Okay, I don't
I
have a
can't.
problem with kiwis.
I have a very big problem with kiwis. It looks like I'm attacked by a cat. I get like my whole back gets scratched up, and it literally looks like I had a tumble with a cat and the cat won. Like it's just kind of crazy. And we figured out that it was kiwi that
Yeah.
caused the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's vitamin C. You have ascorbic acid, which is usually the synthetic vitamin C. That gave me a big rash on my back, and I was pregnant with my first daughter when I realized that. And the doctor said immediately stop that because your baby is getting the rash too. So I cannot have ascorbic acid, but if it's real vitamin C from fruits or vegetables, I have no problem. It has to be the right thing, the right proper organic food.
Yeah. Sometimes the body doesn't know how to process it. I'm gonna say
Yeah, and a lot of
most of the
time,
time.
the first thing, I came to this country and I was vegetarian at a time, and I was dating a guy who became my husband later on. And he was worried because I wasn't eating meat. And he wanted me to eat a lot of yogurts. So I bought some yogurts and I opened one and it was green. And then the other one was kind of orange pinkish. And in Switzerland, I grew up eating yogurts, but they were white with big
Yep.
pieces of fruits in. So I found a book that talked about coloring and flavoring and all the artificial stuff that was in the American food, which we didn't have at the time in Switzerland. We do now. It's all Americanized or globalized. But that's when I studied. I was 24. I said, what's going on with the food? And that's when I started to read labels.
Yeah.
And if you cannot understand whatever is on that label, your body doesn't know how to digest it.
Yeah. There's a lot of big words up on the labels.
Yep, exactly. And not healthy for us.
No, no. I I've come to realize that, like, so for me, like, I think mindset while going through a health journey, whether it's cancer or something else, and then nutrition is like right here.
Yep.
Uh, that because if you don't have the correct mindset, like if you think you're gonna die, the chances of dying are that much higher. If you want to live and you actively decide to fight, there's scientific evidence that, when you get angry, your immune system doesn't function um at its highest level for like 6 hours. So
Yeah.
if you're telling your body to die, it's going to listen. So you really
Yep.
have to be careful with your mind talk about what you say to your body. So you start with your mental scape, and then next is what goes in your mouth.
Yeah, and you talk about anger. It's as bad to be angry as drinking for your liver.
Yeah.
Your liver is the organ that holds the anger. I had a great story I heard yesterday, Thursday, about food. And there was this kid that had a lot of problem in school, and the mother was asking the school to have a psychiatrist take care of her son, and they didn't do anything. And the one day she's called by the school, they saying your son is threatening to blow up the whole school with a bomb. Come get him. And she said, I told you he had problem and I couldn't do anything. So they listened and they got him to work with a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist told the mom, you can either put your son on SSRIs, antidepressant for the rest of his life, or you can have him eat organic. And the mom didn't have much money, but she gave her son organic food, organic rice and beans. That's what he had. 2 weeks later, the school called back and said, what did you do? He is a model student. And I've heard several stories in school where one school decided to put a kitchen in to have vegetables, fresh salads, and they used to have so much damage to the school in the millions. And having the kitchen and the organic food, all of a sudden they didn't have to repair the school because students did not damage the school. And they saying if we can get back to real food instead of the junk that they are feeding our children in schools, we would have a much more peaceful school.
Yeah, there
So
there are testings,
food is very important.
they're doing studies on the effects of the red dye number whatever and yellow dye whatever. Like, it it's definitely affecting our kids. If you look at what's going on with all of the hyper ADHD and stuff like
Mhm.
that, like it's toxins and sugar.
Yeah, I think the red dye is illegal in England and probably in Switzerland too. In some ways, they're more strict in Europe, but they still little by little things are infiltrating. When my parents came to visit, my dad took so many pictures of these blue cakes and green cakes and pink cakes that they were in the store because we didn't have that. Everything is kind of, the regular brown pastry maybe with chocolate. Now you go to Switzerland and you have the pink cake and the blue
Yeah.
drinks and the orange cake. So little by little, it has infiltrated there.
Yeah,
And
it's
my cousin is was a train engineer. He's retired now. And he was talking about how many riots they had in train station after a soccer game, which never happened when I grew up. And I asked him, when did that start? Because they have the SWAT team there when the train comes back, and the team that they were hoping to win did not win, and there were riots. He said, well, I think it started when they introduced the junk food, the fast food. We didn't have McDonald's. We didn't have all that stuff. And he said, when they started, that's when the riots started.
yeah, they want to blame video games over here. It's not.
Yeah.
It's what it's the food. It's definitely what we're eating, and
And
it's
the food affects your mindset, and the mindset affects what you eat too. So we are whole beings, body, mind, soul, spirit. When you affect one, you affect the other.
yes, yes, I absolutely, you know, I because going back to trauma, right? Like because that's the thing that's not tangible, right? Like
Yeah,
it's that's a spiritual thing that you have to work through, and holistic approach to wellness just makes more sense. It, because you, allopathic medicine just treats the symptoms and doesn't look for the root cause of what's going on unless it's blatantly obvious, and then they just give you prescriptions to fix that, but it doesn't.
that's
it's
what they train to do. It's mostly the pharmaceuticals now that make the curriculum. And in this country, the only way you are allowed to treat cancer is with surgery, chemo, or radiation.
Yeah,
No, I had a friend when I was in Fresno in the church. I forgot what cancer she had, but she had either chemo or radiation, and finally they sent her home to die. So there is nothing more we can do. And then she asked, well, what about juicing? And the nurse looked at her and said, you should have started with that, but we were not allowed to tell you.
yeah, which I and not all doctors or oncologists even know that's stuff that could help you, right? My husband's mother had colon cancer, and they stopped doing what the oncologist told them to do, and she went down to Mexico and she started living right with doing
Hmm.
all those protocols and whatnot. And the oncologist is like, I don't understand what's going on here. Like, all the rest of my patients would be dead by now. And my husband's father was like, well, that's because I did exactly the opposite of what you told me to do. And that right there, I think, is the entire point sometimes, right? Like, I do think that allopathic medicine is important in some instances, and some people do absolutely have to have the things that they have to have. And I definitely needed the surgery and the radiation and the chemotherapy, but I also needed to have the right mindset and the Reiki and the detoxifying baths and the aromatherapy and the walking on the ground barefoot and the just all of the other stuff that I did,
Yes.
flower essences and yeah, like
I
uh,
had a friend who was an oncologist when I lived in Las Vegas. He studied the oncology, he was doing radiation. He had to study so much because once a year, if I remember well, he had 1 year, 1 week of testing on 120 different cancers that he had to stay up to date with. So between the hours he was spending as a doctor, plus the constant studying, he didn't have time to check nutrition. So we were talking and say, yeah, nutrition I think is important, but he didn't have time to do it. So I think we need to
yes,
work with teams
yes, 1,000%. I do think that and that's where I think
and
that
just
coaching comes in into play, because Your oncologist is overwhelmed. According to the American Cancer Society, one in every two people is going to have some kind of cancer before they die. So your oncologist sees you for a minute and a half, looks at your chart, decides what your treatment plan is going to be, and starts on that. They don't have time to talk about side effects. They don't have time to talk about what happens after if you actually survive. They don't have time to talk about anything other than the treatment plan that they have devised for you. So it takes a village to raise
And they have to follow it.
yes,
They have to follow the standard treatment plan, or they're going to lose their license.
right, exactly. And it takes a village to raise a child, right? Like, so it takes a village to, I say, to raise a Tanya, right? Like, because you need a community. You absolutely need
Yeah,
a community. So you could have an expert in mindset. You can have an expert in nutrition. You could have several experts in nutrition, right? Like, because there's a lot going on with that piece. Raw versus not raw. Juicing, to get all of that in, removing excess sugar from your diet because cancer does feed on sugar. Things like that, absolutely. Eating foods that help make your body more alkaline.
yeah. And you need to have also people that help people get rid of the sugar, because you go through sugar withdrawal. And I know
It's
that's why
as
I don't go back into eating sugar, because I wanted to climb the wall and scratch getting, don't eat sugar for the first 3 days. It's hell to pay. So you have to have people that stand with the people going through the detox of sugar. It's painful.
sugar is as addictive as cocaine, right? But somehow
Yeah,
sugar is
yeah.
legal. And,
Refined sugar, yeah.
yes, that's what I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
refined sugar. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the next thing I'm going to be working on. I've been working on my nutrition piece for the last year and a half, and I've shed 75 pounds. I I feel a lot better, and I my change has come with little incremental changes, removing soda from my life, removing most white starches, bread and potatoes and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I only eat that twice a week ish, and my plate is now 75% vegetables and then 25% protein and some fat, and I'm not exercising yet, right? Like, and I managed to lose all that weight. It's a little bit at a time. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
and so next we're going to be working on removing sugar from my life, and that means starting with coffee because I put a ridiculous amount of sugar in my coffee. I like a little coffee with my milk and sugar, right? So um we're experimenting with powdered mushrooms and cacao and adaptogenic herbs to make a mushroom hot chocolate, and I'm excited about it because tastes good, and I can drink that
Yeah.
instead and put a
And
little
you
honey
lose
in
the
it.
taste of what you were addicted to eventually. I don't remember the name of what was it, a motivational speaker, but he was talking about doing things in increments. And I remember he had a lady who put 4 teaspoons of sugar in her tea. And her goal was to not have any sugar in her tea, but she couldn't do it. So she would remove like a quarter of a teaspoon at first, then half a teaspoon, then all the teaspoon. And she did that for 3 teaspoons, and she was just left with one. And she could not remove another. So she removed 1 grain of sugar at a time. And it took her a year, and she drank her tea with no sugar.
Yeah. It, the only way to sustain the change is to do incremental steps for the most part. I
Yeah,
mean,
unless you are facing a dire challenge, then you have to do
yes,
it all at once. But if you
yes,
can, yeah, incremental is better. So you don't have the bounce back where all of a sudden you just eat everything, bad for you again.
yeah. When I was younger, my favorite food on the planet was ring dings. They're these little chocolate, Yeah, I used to love them. I used to absolutely love
I
them.
have no clue what that is. I grew up on Swiss chocolate.
So it's like a little cupcake with some cream filling and it's covered in chocolate
Okay.
and it's processed food all the way. And like 2 years ago, one of the kids brought a box home and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have one of those. And I took a bite in it and it tasted like plastic and chemicals to me. And I was like, this is disgusting. And
Yep.
and it used to be the absolute favorite thing. So whether
Your
it was
taste
the
bud changes.
yes, it changes. So if you're at a spot where you don't think you can do the change, you absolutely can do the change. And the time to do the change is before the diagnosis because it's much harder after the diagnosis.
Yes, absolutely. And there's all, all kind of techniques also that will help you to not want the food any longer.
Yeah. And having a support network absolutely does make a difference. Part of the way that
It
we
makes a
handled it,
big difference.
part of the way we handle it here is, with a bunch of teenagers in the house, if we put it up where I couldn't see it and couldn't reach it, then I was less affected by it. But if the potato chips were on this level and the junk food was on this level, then I could
Yeah.
reach it, and then it was a problem. Because there was that was a challenge for me when the kids were at in still living home, and most of them have moved out now, which makes it easier. But also, the junk food is not in my sight, and I'm not looking for it anymore. A year and a half ago, I would look for it and I don't deny myself anything, right? Like if I want a little bit of ice cream, I have a little bit of ice cream. And because I think if you deny yourself, you're going to go crazy and then eat the whole entire bag of potato chips, right? Like, so you don't
Yes.
need to do that. And just have a taste of it and four gummy bears or whatever the thing is, right? And then just move on.
And just enjoy the little bit, and you're gonna see or feel it. You can enjoy it, but if you get the whole tub, all of a sudden it doesn't taste good. You're just eating as a habit. It's not
Yes,
to enjoy it. You can enjoy the little bit, but not the whole tub.
exactly. Exactly. So, two or three bites of the cheesecake is enough, right? Like you don't need to eat the entire piece. And now my husband and I, when we go out to dinner, we will either get just one dinner and share it, or
Hmm.
he'll have an entree and I'll get a salad thing, and then we'll share both.
Yep,
And then on the rare occasion when we have dessert, we just share that too. It
exactly.
helps.
And all of a sudden you're gonna take a bite of your dessert and ask, no, how in the world have I ever enjoyed that? I
Yes.
can go to Switzerland in a pastry shop and I look at the pastry and say, I don't want anything.
I was never like really big into sweets. I just wanted to eat savory things, just too much of it. And with the whole incremental changes, and now I moved from dinner plates to luncheon plates, and
Hmm.
that's it. Like my stomach has gone back to normal size, and when I look at some plates, I'm like I can't eat that. Like if I one of those crazy people that would take pictures of my dinners and I would totally post it. And so I'm looking back at some of the posts that I used to do and I'm like, how did I put all that food into my body in one sitting? Because it's
Yeah.
it's just crazy.
Oh, yeah, we do change.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
unfortunately, we often get motivated when we get a bad diagnosis. It would be so much easier if we were motivated before the diagnosis, like you said.
Well, that's psychology for you. You don't really do anything unless you have accountability for it. So if you can find yourself a way to have accountability for it and be consistent with it before the diagnosis, then you are head and shoulders in front of everybody else when it comes to that. So, like, if I could offer any kind of advice, do it now before a diagnosis, and maybe you will never have that diagnosis if you fix your food because food is so important.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to start our children the right way so they don't get the addiction to the bad foods.
I think that's super challenging in this
Yeah,
world. At like it really is. Even if you have all of the best intentions for that, you can't be with them when they're at school or at their friend's house or like
yeah,
that's so hard.
yes, it is. We live in very challenging times.
Whoop. We absolutely do. We absolutely do. So tell me more about the natural health that you do.
Well, I opened a brick and mortar practice in California in 95, and I was doing nutrition, coaching for just lifestyle coaching. I was doing craniosacral therapy and homeopathy. And that was being a naturopath and ND. Then I did my PhD with a thesis on the power of the mind in healing. And little by little, I worked more with the mind. I still have the background in nutrition, but I work a lot with removing the trauma, removing the imprint of trauma, all the bad luggage. And I teach people how to stay healthy with their mindset every day, because the stresses, the worries, the anxiety, that doesn't help us. And there are all kind of very easy techniques to use on a daily basis. I tell people, if you don't brush your teeth for several days, you're going to accumulate toxins in your teeth. It's the same with the mind. If you constantly worry, you watch the news, you worry about it, it affects your mind. Eventually, it will affect your body. So do these techniques. It's just a few minutes every day so you don't accumulate the stress. And then hopefully you'll have a healthier future.
Okay, so remove your TV. What are a couple other quick tips you can give people? I'm not kidding. We don't have a TV in our common rooms. I mean,
I got rid of my TV when I came to this country. I was 24 years old. I used to love watching the Olympics. And here is just cut with so much advertisement. I wasn't used to it. I don't like to listen to advertisements, so I just stop. I watch, replays on the internet so I can see the guy going down the ski slope, or I love to watch uh,
Netflix.
ice skating,
Yes.
but I don't want to hear about all
Oh,
the advertisement that is just bombarding us all the time.
yeah.
Yeah, I used to go, I was in Florida and a friend of mine was driving sometime and she had the radio on. See, how can you listen to the radio every few minutes? They tell you about your headache, your diabetes, your this, your that. It is not healthy because even if we don't listen attentively to it, the mind picks it up. So yeah,
Yeah.
TV is a big problem. So, watch movies on whatever channel you want if you want to watch a movie. But a constant listening to what they give us doesn't work.
No.
Not
I
healthy.
no. I I yeah, like the kids were upset when we removed it, but we gave them a TV room. I For me, it was an addiction problem. Like I would just sit there and I wouldn't do anything else, just sit there. And I was like, I cannot. Like I need to do other things. This is not healthy for me. And if you watch the news, all it is negative stuff that's bombarding you. And as you said, that really
Several
affects your
years
mind.
ago, I used to get a magazine called the Yes Magazine, and they only have good news in the magazine because there is good stuff happening around the world too. We don't have to focus on the bad stuff. There's a lot of good things happening. So why don't we listen to some good stuff instead of, yeah.
We as a society, as a people, we're drawn to the gawk at the horrible things, and then it becomes who we are, and it doesn't bring light into the
I
world.
get an idea of what's happening in the world. I know there is war going on, but do I have to listen to it every hour? My grandmother used to turn the TV on, no, the radio on every hour to listen to the news. But it's repeating,
And it was
repeating,
the same thing.
repeating. I knew the,
over
you
and
know,
over.
nine
Yep.
eleven. The building came down. Do I have to watch the building come down every hour for months?
No,
It's a
no.
constant
All I had to do
bombarding.
was go
Yes,
look.
horrible things are happening. I know that, but do I need to be, does it need to be repeated all the time, on and on and on?
No, no. 9/11. I was living in New Jersey, and I could see enough.
Yeah. Yeah, the constant repetition is not healthy for our mind. Yeah, we want to be aware what's going on, but we don't need to hear it from every piece, every hour. I can spend the whole day, listening to bad news or the situation we had with the corona thing for 2 years.
Yeah.
Do I have to listen to it over and over and over?
No.
It's a
No.
choice. I can go for a walk and look at the animals and the colors changing on the leaves and listen to a brook. And I feel much better than if I had spent an hour in front of a TV watching the stuff that I know it's going on, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a website, yes?
yes, I do. It's called DanielleJCoaching.com.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure that I put that information in the show notes so that you can get in touch with Dr. Danielle.
I have it. I didn't realize I had it up there, DanielleJCoaching.com.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
There, and I'll also put it in the show notes.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for being on the show today. I really
Well, thank you so
appreciate
much for having me. It
that you
was
came.
really enjoyable.
Yes. Until next time, Cancer Warriors.
All
Good
right.
night.